But with that, I'm going to move over to our first speaker of the day, Father John Quigley. I know Father is here. There you are, Father. I'm going to read a little bit about Father to introduce you. Father John Quigley is a Franciscan friar and priest, an accomplished public speaker, a talented artist. He's a member of the province of St. John the Baptist of the Order of Friars Minor. He's also a citizen of Canada. Began his pastoral and preaching ministry in 1974 as co-leader with Richard Rohr, the New Jerusalem community in Cincinnati. During the 80s, he became coordinator of social justice and peace concerns for the friars of his Franciscan province. Called to Rome in 1988, he was the international coordinator for the efforts of the Franciscan friars in the areas of justice, peacemaking, and care for creation. And from there, in 1998, he went to Geneva, Switzerland as director of Franciscans International, which is a non-governmental organization at the United Nations, where for 10 years he coordinated work for the promotion and protection of human rights. Father has led pilgrimages to Geneva, Rome, and Assisi entitled St. Francis and Human Rights, as well as uh, a human rights pilgrimage to Israel or Ireland, visiting spots in Dublin and in the north where Franciscans have made various efforts to heal the bitter wounds of the Troubles. But today, he is here with us, and we're very blessed and fortunate to have you with us, Father. So, with that, I will turn it over to you. Welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Well, Paul, thank you very, very much. Yeah, that makes me feel old when I hear all these different things that have happened in my life, what I've been doing. Um, what I what I'm wanting to do is to share some ideas on hope. Uh, we were talking initially when talking at the planning of maybe could do a survey of the ideas of how hope has been a major part of different religious movements in the church. And so I went back and tried to look at some of these different communities that focus their message around hope. And I really came out with kind of a clear, confused idea of how central that was and what it means for people. Most people, it's, trying to think positively and act positively to take proactive action, even when it looks dire or there's some problems around you, to look on the better side of life or the rosier side of life, try to take a positive attitude. Well, that's all good and fine, but I think within your community, and you look at the cross as our hope, and as the light to guide our actions and our thinking. Um, a lot of people would hold back from that. They'd say it's maybe too overwhelming or too frightening, or maybe it's even a negative way of thinking of something positive. But I think that uh, what I would like to look at is what do I hope for? What is um, what is my hope in life after? And I'm thinking that in my own life, uh, 60 some years ago, when I came over to the Franciscans, I left Canada, came over to the Friars, and I had a very clear hope of what I was going to be doing in my life, how I was going to participate in the church's life. And I was very much influenced by the advertisements, our vocation literature, and in those days we were, I was inspired by the brown robes of the friars and the thing that we would lead a very simple life. In those days, we shaved our heads and took a new name, and there was all kind of a rough and ready expectation. And then going into formation, and that was in the 60s, the late 60s. Well, all during the 60s, actually. And I was ordained in 72. So it went all through a whole social upheaval period, and I had a different hope, of what I would like to dedicate my life to. I worked in the inner city and tried to bring sense of optimism and hope and encouragement and stability in the lives of young children in our neighborhood. And then I moved over, as we said earlier, to the New Jerusalem community with Richard Rohr. And that was what a 10-year period of my life when it was a whole other different sets of hopes and expectations and commitments and enthusiasm. And then I worked for the Friars with Justice and Peace in Cincinnati and North America. Then I went to Rome for 10 years and then Geneva, Switzerland for another 11 years. And at each stage of my life, I found that I was animated by an enthusiasm, by other people's stories, by things I read, and I could say that that was what my hopes were. I hope to do this. I hope to better the lives of younger people when I was teaching. I hope to um, uh, rebuild a church in North America with Richard when we were doing the work at New Jerusalem community with so many younger people. We had an alternative way of participating in the church besides parishes, et cetera, et cetera. So every period in my life is held together and guided by a particular personal, deeply felt hope.
Yes.
Now, um, here I am. Uh, I just lost my face there. Um,
You're back.
okay, I'm back. Okay, I'm back. Thanks. Okay. Um, Now I'm at a different period of my life. And especially today in our political situation, um, uh, I'm struggling to see what is important. What can I do in terms of bringing hope. Uh, I've been very much politically involved over the last 30 years in social justice issues. And I feel in some ways uh, distraught, discouraged, and I'm not sure what do I hang on to? What is the hope that I'm going to use as my life force? Um, Before at different stages, there was like I was identified, I think, more with a movement, let's say the charismatic renewal in the church, the Franciscan studies, and the rediscovery of the original writings of St. Francis and St. Clare, and many other projects outside of myself that were giving me a direction and a purpose and something to to focus on, to preach about, to be enthused about. And now at 80, I feel I don't have the same energy. It's kind of, I've been around this merry-go-round two or three times, and I'm not sure that, I think I'll just sit this last circuit out. I'm not going to get too excited. But what is it that's the passion? What is it what do I build my life on and around? And I look back at my life and I see different stages, different understandings of what I hope. Who was Jesus for me when I was a young kid? Who was Jesus for me, and how was he my hope as a teenager, then as a young friar, and as a working more in the field and doing different, taking different responsibilities. And now I find uh, that my hope is not so much an external understanding. And it's not just by participating in a movement, but it's like allowing myself just to go smoothly with the pattern of life around me. Um, what I have taken great comfort in is the revelation in the New Testament of the progress and the development in the understanding of St. Paul. Now, I have my scriptures here, the Bible. You'll open it up to the section of Paul, and it's all pretty. It's the printing on that page is the same as on Ezekiel or Genesis or Leviticus. It's all scripture. It all looks somewhat alike, and it's like one word quoted to vis-a-vis another word, et cetera, going back and forth. It's kind of clever, but just in the writings of Paul, we see, I think, a grasping and a devotion to hope, to faith, hope, and what it is that leads him in his life. I think initially, and I'd say that we see in his development of hope, what he hopes in, what he believes, there's a development over the 30, 40 years that we know him. And in some ways, they are hallmarks of some of the stages of development in our own lives. I see in my own life. For example, we hear of Paul as Saul initially, and he is a deeply religious and a highly intelligent Jewish man who is very familiar with the Greek world and Greek literature and the Greek language. He's fully informed of his religious obligations and responsibilities and the vision as a Jewish man. And this secure identity as a Jew, as a scholar, as a person who was on fire with Judaism, this was the anchor for his life, his hope. And then he has this very powerful experience one day that he's knocked out in a way, and he and he begins to realize that things are different, that the person that he was ridiculing and ignoring and pursuing, Jesus, is not just a historical figure that died and is forgotten or being forgotten, but that this force, this person is alive. And he begins this process of trying to understand who is Jesus. And in that reflection, he comes up with the sense that Jesus was the Messiah. He was crucified and he died, and he's going to come back. And so he goes back around with his community, preaching and teaching the uh, with conviction that Jesus he lived, he died, and he rose, and he's going to come again. And if everybody just participates, and if you can join this movement, you will find meaning, and you will find hope, and you will have a whole new extended existence on this planet in the messianic banquet, like all good faithful Jews will experience. They didn't really think of going to heaven. They thought that you could, if you lived a good life and you were judged by one of the 12 judges of the tribe, you could participate in this messianic banquet for 1,000 years, and it would give you a wonderful time of resurrection, of full life. Well, he and the apostles were trying to bring people into that judgment seat where they could be judged to be worthy to be in this banquet. That was their hope. That's for faith. That was their conviction. That's what they were working for. And then when Paul was up in Greece, the next stage was he had been to Thessalonica and he preached there, and people, the Jewish community, many of the people, and even some of the Gentiles, believed in this Jesus and this movement, and they were waiting for him to come back, and they started to, realize that he's coming, but we don't know will it be by Christmas, or is it going to be by New Year's, or when is he going to come? And but in the meantime, I have a car. I don't need that car anymore. I'll sell it and give that money to the poor, and we'll buy food for people when they come on the Sabbath for our meal together, and we'll share things. And because I don't need this stuff, I'll cancel my insurance policy because he's coming back really soon. Well, then when he's up in Thessalonica, or at least Thessalonica, and he's off in Greece, and he gets a message that the people in Thessalonica are really, really worried, and they're very upset because Jesus has not shown up yet. And because he hasn't shown, they're really at a disadvantage because Mrs. Goldstein, who was a great devoted person in the community, a wealthy woman, she gave all her money away. She fed the poor. She opened a little clinic. She did all this stuff, and now uh, she's dead. She's not going to be at the party when Jesus comes back. So Paul then, with conviction, said, "Don't worry about it, because the living will have no advantage over the dead. She will come back. She'll be at the party." This was his conviction. This was his hope. This was his hope. Well, it goes on for a period of time then, another number of years, and he's also confronted other people are dying. Even now, James, the relative of Jesus, was killed in Jerusalem. Stephen was stoned. And so this thing is starting to fall apart. When is he coming? What is happening? And that's when Paul begins to understand that he has a new and a deeper hope, and that is that Jesus the Christ is with us now. He's here with us. In fact, we are members of his body. This goes on for a period of years, and eventually, near the end of his life, when he's in Rome, in prison, under house arrest, he writes back again a new understanding of the Christ. That the Christ is not the physical Jesus of Nazareth who's going to come back and open up a messianic banquet. He's even bigger than the Christian body that we believe in. But the Christ is the anointed one who permeates and is fused all through the universe. This is our hope. Now, here you have, in this very model Christian, having three very different understandings of hope in Jesus Christ. Jesus coming back, looking so much what he looked like the day after he died and was resurrected, and then Jesus in his extended presence in the body of all the believers in the Christian church. And then beyond, Jesus is even beyond the Christian church. Jesus is the Christ. He is the anointed one throughout the whole universe. Now, following Paul's example, what is our hope today? Who is Jesus the Christ for you, for me? I can remember Jesus for me when I was 6 or 7 years old, making my first Holy Communion. Jesus was like kind of a ghostly holy or Sacred Heart figure who came to me in that little wafer at the Eucharist when I made my first communion. And I couldn't figure out how that uh, body of this man with a red tunic or red cloak and white tunic somehow shrunk and would be in that little bread. Or Sister Cajetan told me it was true, so it had to be true. So that's kind of what I hoped. Later, Jesus became, and there was a different understanding of that hope. And that was when the charismatic renewal. It was when I was working with Richard Rohr with a lot of community, and then the image of the Christ changed when I did a lot of work in other developing countries and met with some of the poorest people I've ever imagined possible in life. People living and sleeping eating on the streets in India and Brazil and Pakistan, China, homeless people in New York and Rome and Cincinnati. Now, what I am finding is that I really don't have I don't have as many answers for all the questions as I used to have. Um, I'm finding the political situation in North America, in the United States, uh, to be just overwhelming in terms of trying to come up with answers, alternatives that can take effect. And so I begin to see more clearly that my hope is not to find the magic key that will open up that lock and there will be peace and harmony and we'll be enter into the parousia. The other thing that has challenged my expectation and my hopes is first it was the Hubble telescope, but the universe is so much bigger. The galaxies are lovely, huge, etc. But I could still contain, I still could keep God, my image of God and Jesus within that framework. But the other one was like 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when on Christmas Day, when they uh, put up the new telescope, that like it just blew the size of the universe. It is huge, huge. I remember seeing a photograph uh, when it was to celebrate the anniversary on Christmas Day, and they showed a picture of a star nursery. It's in some part of the far, 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 far away. And they said this picture, which is stunningly beautiful. They said, "Well, this was just captured over the last month and and configured and put together uh, so that we can now look at it and see these different spots of light and the stars and the dust and whatever." But that this picture is what it's a photograph, even though we just got the picture last month. That picture is what the star looked like 5,000 years ago, because it's taken 5,000 years for the light to come from that part of the universe to our cameras so we can capture it. Now, that means in our world of thinking is that our God is bigger than this universe. So suddenly, the God and Jesus, the Holy Family, and other people like Francis of Assisi, they're almost like little miniature uh, toy soldiers or something in this huge, 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 huge scenario. And what I'm finding now is that my hope is not so much in my understanding of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and devotion to him in that physical way, but my hope is to relax within this incredible universe that all is well and all will be well, that our God is a personal force of energy that suffuses and is present everywhere, that the Christ is the physical manifestation of this force of love. And what is so lovely is that this force respects all my devotions to the Sacred Heart and my devotions to Jesus, liberator of the poor, and liberation theology, and all any understanding that I have and I'm willing to embrace is those choices are respected by this source. And the source moves, this God force, person, persons, moves with such confidence and freedom as to respect and allow even horrible decisions, like an officer shooting a woman 3 times in the face, killing her, taking her away from her children, her family. Doesn't rush in and smudge and take that out, erase it. And we see this embrace of idiocy and even the embrace of the broken parts of human nature. We see this clearly in the crucifixion and the death of Jesus. That the force didn't say, okay, folks, on Friday afternoon by 7 o'clock, the temple, the curtain of the temple split, and God's Yahweh speaks to the station, people of Israel. That is enough. You have now crossed the line, the unforgivable line. No, it's constantly embracing the good and the bad, the broken in the universe, always trusting, I believe, always trusting that all is well, all will work out well. Just hang in there for another 20 million years or whatever it's going to take. Just hang. We're on a move. It's going to work. So, uh, when Lance was talking earlier about crossing borders, I think this is what we're invited to when we're talking of our commitment to that unique hope that we have, is that we can be at home in one understanding of life and expectations, and then all of a sudden that becomes limited and it's not enough, and we're invited then to step beyond that into a bigger hope. And we move, as Paul says, when as a child I spoke as a child, I thought as a child, etc. That's pretty much the rhythm. And I think that the challenge for us is not to say, "Oh, we know what I know what that unique, that very specific, that wonderful hope is, and here it is. I've got it understood, and I'm going to perpetuate that, write about it, and write some music or one thing to celebrate it." But it's an invitation into the life of the infinite one. It's an invitation for us to become godly, to become part of God. And that is, I guess I would say, that is the principal hope that I would say is I'm challenged now in my own life to use this as a guidance. Just in summary, I look back at Paul and see how in his own public life, as a preacher of the Christian vision, in his own life, he clung to different understandings of the hope. And he moved from one to another to a broader one we see in Ephesians and in Colossians. And I see that even without my studying this and saying, this is the pattern I need to reproduce in my life, it's like, by golly, just by being faithful, by showing up, by showing up and being cooperative, be willing to learn, it's like you're drawn into this deep, deep evolution of the spiritual life. Um, Just leave it at that for now. If you have any thoughts or questions or reaction, that might stimulate something.
Father, thanks very much. Since we have a large number of people, what I'll ask is if people could type in any thoughts or questions in the chat box, and then I'll read them out loud. And while people consider that, I actually now because I have the microphone, so I get to go. But the way you described hope, it made me think like when we're younger, we hope that we'll be able to do things. Like, and you were attracted to your community because of the things that were being done. But then we hope that we'll be something. But then at the end, like in the Holy Cross, the Holy Cross, Ave Cruz Spes Unica, the cross our only hope. But even that is a changing understanding of what we do, what we can be, and what the cross is. And inside that weird tension, you're just stretched over a lifetime. And I'm just curious, if that makes sense. Like, as I was just thinking that as you spoke, like that tension that defines our hope.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're saying is what I'm struggling to say too. Yeah.
Yeah. I
And the thing is, when you come up with a different understanding, and when I'm at 80, and a lot, my understanding is so different in a way. It's stripped down, and it's very, very basic. It's like that is okay. That's fine. Don't feel you're sometimes I was tempted to think, well, maybe I've just grown disenchanted with the structures of the Franciscan movement, and I don't like this, and I don't like this last assignment, or these are all things that are bothering me and getting clouding it, and I'm just becoming less involved. I'm not, part of it, I don't have the energy I used to have, and I've lived so much, and now it becomes simpler, much simpler.
all right, this is from Veronica. Have you noticed that many times people who are in vulnerable situations can teach us who are religious, Sister Veronica, about hope? Did you notice that when you traveled around the world?
I noticed that tremendously. I've led a very privileged life because I spent a lot of time with very, very poor people who had very little to um, for themselves. And I remember so many different meals that I had, and I just came in on a plane and I had a meal service on the plane. I'm down in this village now, um, and they would go out. The chicken would run by and they'd take it and they'd kill it and cook it, and then they'd share that with me. It's like there are a lot of other things besides that being fed, but um, I was stunned many times by the revelation of God uh, within the lives of these people. Yeah.
Here's one from Chris. I was captivated by this thought of considering the saints like Francis, St. Paul, etc., as teeny tiny particles in the greatest story of the universe, as you eliminated the understanding we now have of the galaxy, how light travels and such. There's a lot to unpack there in that beautiful image you leave us with.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then one more. We have one more. The other thing that strikes me is, first of all, thank you just for being so honest in your own personal experience. But there's moments in our lives where if we don't feel like we have it figured out, there's a comfort time where you're like, all right, I got this. And then you realize, uh-oh, that's not how it is. And even if you know that the next thing is more correct or better, you have to leave the last thing behind. And I talk about that a little bit about leaving this um, a comfortable, accepted, this cloak that you wear of like, all right, my hope is in what I do, and then, uh-oh, but you have to leave that behind for the next thing. You must have left a few things behind.
I've left a lot of things behind. Yeah. I think that what Lance was saying before is important to in many ways, but the thing of crossing borders of the heart, how to, you can come in, your world is pretty sophisticated, pretty tight and organized, and you feel secure and you're on top of things. And then for some reason it changes. Uh, and I've had things change basically because they fell apart. Because um, working with, for example, I was with Richard for 10 years and I wore out. He's always writing a book or he's enthused and stuff and a new vision for the people. We had 800 people in the community and I was counseling and counseling and counseling. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I stepped away and there was a sense of failure, a lack of being incomplete. My time in Geneva, Switzerland, we had a fantastic office at the United Nations on human rights. And because of some political moves within the Franciscan family, men and women, um, I was disinvited in my job. I was let go. I wasn't fired. I just thanked that time is up. Like, well, thank you for thanking me. But, it was a real, but I have to say I'm happier to be here. I don't have as much. I got an art studio. I'm doing my paintings. I'm doing stuff like that. And I'm, with you guys today on a Saturday morning, talking about what I have come to discover and love. So yeah, there's a lot of letting go. And I think, letting go is not just a Christian value or a discipline, but this is the life of God. God lets go constantly, constantly, constantly. It's surrendering, giving up. That's why Jesus is manifests the life of God for us. And the perfect story for me in this is, the history or the story goes that after the crucifixion on Friday, the disciples gather, for on Saturday and Sunday, they're in the upper room again and they don't know what to do and they're all served. And he comes back in the room and they're stunned. He shows them his hands and his side. They said, if you're trying to figure out this is it really me. I'm wounded. I got I, that's what happened. But it is all the first thing he says is peace be with you. My peace. I found something in the grave. I found peace. I give it to you. And then he breathes on them. Oh, this is what he has now, his breath. And we now theologically, after 2,000 years, know that this breath is the Holy Spirit of God, the holy breath of God. This is the force. This is the personal force that holds the Father and the Son together in an infinite ecstatic union. This breath, the breathing that they share, is there. He gives that away. It's unbelievable. I think what I would have done is, well, I put that in a storage room and say, now, if you guys can shape up and if you can learn Latin and French and English and you can write scripture and there's a lot of things you have to do yet to build a church. Now, when you get that done, then I may let you may visit this room where this holy breath lives. But no, it's given away. So I think it's a promise to us that it's okay to cross borders. It's okay for us to step beyond our security. It's okay to begin a journey empty-handed, you know. So yeah, your question kind of stirs some of that stuff up for me.
Father, I could talk to you all day long.
We don't have
I'm going to visit you in Ohio. Okay, we do have to move on. Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you so much. And God bless you.
Well,
Thank
God
you.
bless all of you. It's some very, very encouraging promise of work that your commitments here all over the place. Thanks.